Welcome to this week's Roll for Crit board game news roundup. Unfortunately, there was no news this week, so that's it. Just kidding! It's actually April Fool's Day. That was a joke. Pretty funny. We actually have some real board game news, not fake, real news for you for the news roundup for April 1st, 2019.
That took us 10 minutes to come up with that joke.
And it was worth it. Plaid Hat Games announced a big new release for this summer called Abomination, the Heir of Frankenstein. This game is based on the classic novel Frankenstein. It takes place 20 years after that story, and all of the players are now creepy mad scientists, or maybe not creepy, I won't judge, that's up to you to decide, who are attempting to put together their own monstrosities, or abominations if you will, from beyond the grave by traveling around Paris, collecting different resources, different body parts, and trying to put them together before they decay. They are doing this in service of their client, who presumably is Frankenstein's monster, but you have to do it before a certain number of rounds because there is someone out there trying to kill the monster after a promise that he made to Victor Frankenstein himself. So you need to get the money from him before he's murdered. So it's one of those games. So Frankenstein, this is a very interesting, different kind of twist on it. It's essentially a worker placement game where you have your own, everybody has their own little board. You actually are getting body parts. You have cubes that represent things. You need to get ice to preserve the body parts. I will say they have the rulebook online. You can look at it right now. And based on what I've read, it seems complicated. This is not a light game. A lot of the actions are have depth to them. What do you think about the concept of this game?
I mean, it's interesting, and I can't help but sort of compare it to actually Dysenstein.
What are you, from Young Frankenstein? You pronounce it Frankenstein?
No, I think that's
Dysenstein?
Dysenstein?
I assume.
the Sandy Peterson game, which is sort of a bit more of a silly take on it, and because they're both still building a body. And that one, you actually use the bodies to actually combat each other. This doesn't sound like you actually... once the body's done, it's done.
Yeah, you are competing, but it doesn't sound like there's not really any PvP.
Euro, I guess, version of it almost.
Yeah, definitely that.
But, I mean, I love their art. I like Plaid Hat, so I am curious, definitely. And I believe it's coming out this summer.
This summer.
So hopefully they'll have it at Gen Con for us to be able to play and mess around with.
Yeah, well, I know one thing for sure is that this now means that Frankenstein is officially a candidate for our book club episodes. We can read Frankenstein after we play this game and see how they compare.
Strictly, we're going to read the Wishbone version, which is actually on our shelf behind us.
Yeah, I have the Wishbone version too. Anyway, as we said, Abomination, the Heir of Frankenstein, sometime going to be released this summer with a price tag, retail suggested, of $59.95.
We've also got a bunch of release-related information with Fantasy Flight strictly following pretty much all their Star Wars properties. First off, the Star Wars Destiny has been going through, if you don't know, it's sort of a card game with dice, with packs and stuff, but it's going to go through its first rotation soon, so they actually have a fun little article talking about what was strong, what was weak. They said blue was the strongest, which to me isn't surprising because as a Magic player, I always feel like blue tends to pull ahead somehow, even though that shouldn't be related in two different games. They also have two new expansions for Star Wars Legion, the Clone Wars Troopers and the Battle Droids, which I think are probably going to be great additions because that game is a war game with lots of troops, and those are, I think, a bit more memorable troops, and that's when Stormtroopers could actually hit their targets. And there was some bad news for those who are Armada fans. Back at last Gen Con, there was the Star Wars Super Star Destroyer. This is like, I think, 2 feet long. It's huge. And that has been delayed to apparently Q3 of this year. Maybe it's an April Fool's joke. I'm sure a lot of fans are hoping for that to be the case. But we'll have to see. And finally, we have the Star Wars Armada has a new expansion coming out alongside in Q3, so maybe that's also timed with that. But it's called Rebellion in the Rim. This is their second campaign set, so maybe a good buy for if you have someone who maybe isn't into war games and needs a bit more story there. And has, of course, a lot more like different win conditions and a story to follow. We did not play the first campaign one, so I don't know how exciting that is. But of course, new heroes as well. I think they showed Lando and 88. Is that the droid's name?
IG-88.
IG-88. Thank you. So that, as I said, Q3, and it said 2 to 6 player. So I don't know if that's 2 at a time or 6 all at once.
Huh. Yeah, it is kind of, we should, because, we liked Armada and X-Wing, but we're definitely tend to be more interested in the thematic elements of it. And I feel like it would be fun to try one of those campaign expansions out. A lot, I don't know, a bunch of things happening here.
Yeah, a whole lot of Star Wars.
Things. I mean, Legion, I think, like you said, Battle Droids and the Clone Troopers, that's a great choice. Yeah. Legion was really fun. It's another game that's like, I'd love to play that if I actually had the time and resources.
Well, that was actually the one, I have not played it yet. Only you have.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But it just seems, in particular, because I guess those troops are much more war-based. Like, the first movie ends in a war, not really 2 Jedis.
Plus, you can have like a dozen of them, and it makes sense to have a bunch of those just same copies, which is nice.
The rotation thing is interesting if you're in card games, just seeing what was strong or not. I was glad to hear Vader was one of the strongest cards. That feels good. The ship thing, I mean, I'm not surprised if a 2-foot-long ship's delayed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that seems intense. I don't know who's buying that? How are you storing it?
When we played Armada, wasn't it 3x3 that we played on?
I know X-Wing's 3x3. Armada might be a bit bigger.
X-Wing. That's probably my. Because can you imagine that? Just plop this down.
It is really insane.
That I think might be. That would be a cool thing if to include a campaign with that, because that could be like a boss battle. Like that could be just a special campaign mode for fighting that ship or something.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe it's related. Maybe, like you said, those two things come together. I think I'm happy to hear
they are
that.
Separate. I know they are separate.
Right. But maybe they coincide.
That would be really nice if it did.
I'm happy to hear that Destiny is. It seemed like it kind of maybe had died off a little bit. I really liked that game. I hadn't heard much about it, but I guess it's still doing well if they're doing a new set.
A lot of card games, I do think. They don't straight out die. They just have become a bit more niche.
Mm-hmm.
Few things, obviously. Once again, if you're not already Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Pokemon, it's very hard because they already claimed like Saturdays are mine.
Right.
So it's hard to get the niche in. So I think it's just something you got to keep pushing. And it's really nice to see as a tournament scene. And I do love, even if I don't play the Star Wars Destiny, it is nice to read. I like hearing about the kind of tournament, why rules, what is rotating out, like this is going to hurt this deck because these kinds of combos are working out. Because even if you don't play it, there are certain strategies that you could see why that would hurt. Like, their drawing is leaving. That's going to really hurt because most games you want to have draw.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
It's interesting.
I think it's still a cool article to read regardless whether you play or not. And definitely if you're first time to card games and you're playing Destiny, you should read that so you know why your deck is no longer legal.
It's a nice intro to that kind of thing. Where Star Wars news comes, Star Trek news is often likely to follow, and for that reason, I assume WizKids has announced a new Star Trek game titled Conflick in the Neutral Zone. You heard that correctly. It is Conflick, spelled with a flick, like flicking, because this is a dexterity game. Players are going to be taking on different forces, different factions, Klingons, Federation, and you are fighting over dilithium crystals in the neutral zone. You're doing so by actually taking your ships, which are different shapes of discs, and flicking them onto the board, trying to collect resources, and attacking other players by trying to knock their ships off the board by flicking yours into them. So eventually, by doing so, you're going to gain command points, and whoever gains the most command points at the end of the game wins. This is supposed to be a relatively simple game, and what it reminded me of was a game that we had played a while ago called Cosmic Kaboom, which I think you kickstarted, perhaps?
I did.
And similar kind of thing, where you were flicking spaceships onto a board.
Yes.
And that was pretty fun, I thought. And this sounds like maybe it has a bit more of a theme, a little bit more flavor, maybe a bit more depth to it.
We'll have to see. I actually remember you being a bit lukewarm on that game.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
It's been a long time since we played it.
Yeah, that game, I remember after playing, everyone was like,
you might know better than I did.
Putting it away. And so it hasn't really hit the table since. I mean, Star Trek, maybe just because it's not attached to Fantasy Flight, which is so big, but I don't feel like it's had the presence Star Wars has in board games. Except for the RPG, I feel like that's where it seems to sound, which sort of makes sense to me because I feel there's more talking in Star Trek.
Yeah, we had I believe it's Star Trek Alliance was the Gale Force 9 one.
Yeah, and there's Attack Wing.
I mean, there's a lot, but yeah, none of them have quite. I mean, like you said, if you're not Fantasy Flight, it's hard to compete with that.
Yeah, it could just be that.
But
this could be good. I am hoping, or not hoping, I will only play once they add the Transformers Star Trek crossover comic characters in. But obviously that's not going to happen. But for 2 to 4 players, this could be a fun addition for a Star Trek fan because the dexterity games are definitely, I think, a little bit easier to get into entry-wise.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah, it seems it's a goofy little thing, but maybe it will be fun.
Until, the one Star Trek fan goes, this couldn't work because the motion and the distance would cause an explosion in the engine or something.
We will find out the physics behind all of it when it's released later this year.
Keeping with copyrighted products, we have a new game from Square Enix, which is based on the Tomb Raider series titled Tomb Raider Legends, the board game. In this game, you will all be trying to gain an artifact to prove you're Lara Croft, I guess. I don't know if there's a storyline where she gets cloned or reflections of her in a mirror. Anyways, you will be each trying to get the artifact and get out, and of course you'll be stopped by other players or creatures or other strange obstacles to get injuries. The game itself is for 3 to 4 players, comes with some miniatures of Lara Croft and a bunch of other cards and boards, and goes for $59.99, which I'm surprised to see for a price of that. It's something actually a little cheaper. First thing comes to mind, obviously, I think, is the Uncharted board game. How much was that?
No more than $30 probably. Yeah, when it came out, which was.
And I will say that game not half bad.
I think we either did a playback. I think back in the day for it. We're actually pretty big fans for a licensed game. The Uncharted game is pretty good, but also in that game you didn't all play as Nathan Drake.
Right.
You did have different characters, and there are other characters. It seems like this is mainly based on the newer entries, not the originals.
That's what they could have done. One is the PlayStation 1 Lara Croft. One's
different outfits and regions. Snowwear Lara Croft or whatever. Scuba Lara Croft. Angelina Jolie could be one of them. I love those games. The new ones, or at least the one that I played, was really fun. And so it seems like there could be something there, but this doesn't. I don't know. This doesn't sound super promising yet. There's not too many details about how it'll actually play, and it doesn't sound. It sounds like it's just attached to Square Enix, like not any other publisher.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And which to me, I'm like, they've been very weird to me recently.
Just recently.
Well, I mean, even when video games and stuff. So like with the board game, I'm like, maybe you could have instead of given this out to someone. Like, I'm sure even if you go to Asmodee, they like Fantasy Flight. I'm sure Plaid Hat would have been. I think you could have had maybe a fun story element to it or something a bit more.
Yeah.
We could be wrong. We will see. But once again, I'm very curious at that high price point because as far as I know, the only miniatures, which usually are the things that I think first thing comes to mind when increased price, are the Lara Croft. And I think it's at about 50 or 60 cards, which I don't think is crazy huge.
That doesn't sound like that many.
So you can check it out and see if this is an artifact for you.
And now our new game releases for this week. There's Detective L.A. Crimes, which is the new expansion for Detective, a modern crime board game that takes place in a classic L.A. noir kind of setting. Then you've got the brand new Nickelodeon Splat Attack game, which was on Kickstarter last year, now going out to the general public, where you play different Nickelodeon characters having a food fight. And then there is a brand new release for the Transformers trading card game. It's the Rise of the Combiners Devastator deck. And I know that you have this.
I don't have it.
Oh, you don't have it. I didn't know.
Metroplex, but I will be going to get it soon. I'm very excited because, he was the first combiner, so it's sort of nice that they made him as their pre-made set. So if you want a combiner set, you can literally just go out and buy that one.
I also will say, bonus news, I saw that they announced a new starter set, which is Bumblebee and Megatron.
Megatron, yeah, along with Wingblade and Starscream.
Why Bumblebee again?
Well, this is because the new TV show they're doing has started off with Bumblebee and Wingblade, so I think it's more based around that.
Interesting.
Though I would have loved if they maybe showed the art a bit more. I think it still is more G1 art, but that's because they want to keep everything centric. But the other stuff, you got your detective in, and it came with a fax.
Yeah, I pre-ordered it from the Portal Games website where they had like some special extra quality pre-order bonuses. And yes, it came with a literal fax, and every case is written on this, like all the scenarios with their rules, and it unfolds like this long. It's amazing.
We'll put a photo up on Instagram if you haven't already.
Yeah, check out our Instagram for that.
Once again, Nick Splat Attack sounded interesting.
We'll see.
Once again, I always love to keep saying Gen Con because that's when you have a chance to, unless you have another board game convention that maybe they show
It's coming up. It's not as far away as you may think. Let us know, which of these games are you looking forward to? One of the licenses or maybe Abomination? What do you think about the price tags for some of these games? You excited to try them out? Talk to us in those comments down below. Also in the description, you can find links for our social media. Like we said, Instagram, @RollForCrit, Twitter, Facebook, what have you.
Until then, we're going back on the hunt for Frankenstein's monster. I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been Roll for Crit News.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome board game content from Roll for Crit.
And please leave a comment. We're lonely.